When 90 Day Fiancé introduced viewers to Clayton and Anali, it didn't take long for audiences to realize this wasn't going to be a simple love story. Their journey unfolded as a complex mix of romance, uncertainty, cultural differences, emotional walls, and deeply human fears about commitment. From the moment Anali arrived in the United States, their relationship felt like it was balancing on a tightrope, one wrong step away from collapse, yet full of potential if they could learn to trust each other. Their story wasn't loud or flashy. Instead, it was raw, awkward, and painfully real, making it one of the most relatable arcs in the franchise. A long-distance love built on hope. Clayton and Anali's relationship began like many modern romances. Long distance, fueled by late-night video calls, shared dreams, and carefully curated glimpses of daily life. Clayton, introverted and routine-oriented, found comfort in Anali's presence, even through a screen. Anali, independent and emotionally guarded, was drawn to Clayton's sincerity and stability. On paper, they made sense, but long-distance relationships have a way of hiding cracks beneath the surface. Without shared physical space, real-world stressors, or cultural immersion, it's easy to fall in love with the idea of someone rather than the reality. That reality came rushing in the moment Anali landed in the U.S. The culture shock hits hard. For Anali, moving to America wasn't just about love. It was about leaving behind her family, her culture, her language, and her comfort zone. What she expected was a warm transition into a shared life. What she experienced instead was isolation, awkward living arrangements, and a sense that she had stepped into Clayton's world without space for her own. Clayton, deeply rooted in his routines, seemed unprepared for the emotional weight Anali carried. He struggled to read her discomfort, often mistaking her silence for indifference rather than fear. Meanwhile, Anali felt increasingly unseen, physically present but emotionally alone. This disconnect became one of the defining challenges of their journey. Emotional walls and unspoken doubts. One of the most striking aspects of Clayton and Anali's relationship was Anali's hesitation to fully open up. She was cautious, reserved, and at times visibly unsure if she had made the right decision. Viewers questioned her intentions, but her guarded nature spoke volumes about her past experiences and fear of rushing into a life-altering commitment. Clayton, on the other hand, craved reassurance. He wanted affection, validation, and signs that Anali was all in. When he didn't receive them, his frustration grew, sometimes surfacing as passive-aggressive comments or emotional withdrawal. Instead of confronting issues head-on, both often retreated inward, creating emotional distance in a relationship that already felt fragile. The living situation, a silent stressor. Adding fuel to the fire was Clayton's living situation, which quickly became a source of tension. What might have seemed manageable to him felt overwhelming to Anali. Privacy was limited, comfort was lacking, and for someone already struggling with homesickness, the environment only intensified her anxiety. This wasn't just about physical space. It symbolized a deeper issue. Anali needed to feel like Clayton was building a future with her, not simply fitting her into his existing life. Clayton, however, seemed blindsided by how much these details mattered. Their differing expectations highlighted a key truth. Love alone isn't enough without adaptability. The 90-day clock adds pressure. As the infamous 90-day deadline ticked closer, the pressure mounted. Conversations about marriage grew heavier. Doubts that once lingered quietly now demanded answers. Would Anali say yes or walk away? For Clayton, the clock represented hope and urgency. For Anali, it felt like a countdown to a decision she wasn't emotionally ready to make. This imbalance created moments of tension that felt painfully authentic. There were no dramatic explosions, just long silences, awkward conversations, and the weight of unspoken fears hanging in the air. Trust, transparency, and fear of regret. A recurring theme in their journey was trust, or the lack of it. Anali struggled to fully trust Clayton's readiness to support her emotionally and practically. Clayton questioned whether Anali truly loved him or was simply unsure of the relationship altogether. Both were haunted by the same fear. What if I make the wrong choice? Anali feared being trapped in a life that didn't feel like her own. Clayton feared losing the woman he had built his future around. Their vulnerability often surfaced in quiet moments rather than dramatic confrontations, making their story deeply human. Small steps toward understanding. Despite the challenges, there were moments of growth. Clayton began to recognize that love required more than consistency. It required empathy. Anali slowly started expressing her needs, even when it felt uncomfortable. These small shifts mattered. They showed that while their relationship was strained, it wasn't stagnant. Progress didn't come in grand gestures, but in subtle changes, listening more, reacting less, and attempting to meet halfway. It was messy, it was imperfect, but it was real. The question of compatibility. As viewers watched, one question lingered. Were Clayton and Anali truly compatible, or just afraid to let go? Their differences weren't superficial. They reflected contrasting communication styles, emotional needs, and expectations of partnership. Yet beneath it all, there was genuine care. Compatibility, their story suggested, isn't about sameness, it's about willingness to grow together. Whether Clayton and Anali could do that within the tight confines of the K-1 visa timeline remained uncertain. Why their story resonated. Clayton and Anali's journey stood out because it mirrored real relationships more closely than fairy tale romances. Not every couple argues loudly, some drift silently. Not every problem has a clear villain. Sometimes love fails not because of betrayal, but because of misalignment. Their story resonated with viewers who have questioned relationships, struggled with communication, or faced life-altering decisions without certainty. A journey still unfolding. By the end of their arc, one thing was clear. Clayton and Anali's relationship wasn't defined by perfection, but by honesty. Whether they ultimately succeed or part ways, their journey captured the essence of what 90-Day Fiancé does best, revealing how love is tested when fantasy meets reality. Their story reminds us that love isn't just about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right partner. And sometimes, the hardest part of the journey isn't crossing borders, it's bridging emotional distance.